The recruitment sector had its nose punched in 2024. After 2022, which was the best year that we've ever had in recruitment, 2023 just slowed down. If it wasn't for contracts, everyone would have their asses on the floor right now. If I were to start up a recruitment business today, would I be based in the UK? 100%. Would I touch the UK market? Not in a million years.
Gary Goldsmith.
Gary Goldsmith.
Gary Goldsmith.
Gary Goldsmith.
Gary, Uncle Gary.
Gary Goldsmith, TV star, mentor, and industry heavyweight. With decades in the game, he was the architect behind S3's contract division, a business that's revolutionized the recruitment industry. He's worked with some of the biggest names in recruitment, helping agencies maximize profitability, streamline operations, and cut through the noise in an ever-changing market. If you've ever wondered what it really takes to survive and thrive in recruitment, Gary's the man to tell you, as he's diving deep into the challenges recruiters face, the biggest mistakes agencies are still making, and what the future holds for the industry. Stay tuned.
Okay, so we had a guy called Alan Todd, who I loved very dearly. So Alan was basically entitled internally as the business undevelopment team. So people would come in with opportunities. Every deal had to be approved by a director and then had to be approved by Alan. And if Alan said, these terms don't match, this doesn't match, I don't like this, they're paying us on this. People make stupid mistakes. You're paying us dollars, but we're paying out in sterling. Yeah. I mean, it's just stupid, right? Stuff like that. Yeah. We haven't put any withholding tax in Germany or the dam. So he just basically ratified everything. And it was the joy that this stuff now. So Alan Todd saved us so much money because people were so stupid, because they were so keen to get the deal done. They just didn't look at the finite detail of everything. And the manager wanted the deal to be done. And we just needed someone like Alan who just didn't give a shit and would say, no.
So what happened when Alan can be an AI? Like, obviously AI now is like a huge topic. Yeah. And every business is using AI tools, right? We are talking about, hey, 15 years ago, Alan, maybe it's not 15 years ago.
Yeah.
However, I do agree with you. The process is really, really important. But how do we really balance the speed of business? But obviously, like even as a business owner myself, when I'm thinking about what's our next month's revenue and so on, sometimes you have the mentality of like, I'm just really looking at the top line number, right? And then you have all of the process and compliance going around it, which is like, oh my God, I really don't want to deal with this. So what do you think about like makes Alan so special that he would you say that he's kind of like a deal blocker in that case?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
yeah.
He's a deal blocker.
He was my guardian angel.
Yeah.
The only person that Alan went to work for was for me and the brand. He did not give.
What did he? Would you, if you say that, hey, there's like one big, really, really huge benefit that he's adding to the organization, like what is that? From a
He's really good fun on a night out, by the way.
Okay.
So it was brilliant.
That's good.
Yeah. He'd be walking around the pubs with a bottle of JD. So he was good fun as well and really good value.
But are there any kind of risk in the business? You think, hey,
he did not take. So I empowered him. It's like a little bit like, you remember a tag at school. Tag, you're in. Any risk is down to you. Now, if you share that risk with me, and I say we do it, then it's my risk as the boss of bosses. Yeah. If you say yes and it goes wrong, it's your fault. And and that's bonus related. So he would always ask me. So if we had, I mean, when we first started, it was traffic light. So it's greens or everything's good. And it's same with terms with Mark. If it was amber, it's a commercial decision of which we all get involved in. If it was red, but didn't come to me, he just said no. That we won't do that. We won't take that risk. And that was genius. If I could supplement that now with AI, because as we expanded, we had to make sure that all of our business leaders understood the impact of one mess up.
So run us through the impact of one mess up. Like, have you had an example? For example, there is a mess up of project. Maybe because of Alan is there, right? So you don't actually have any mess up.
Of course we did. I mean, there's with all things compliant, it doesn't matter because you can check things, forever. And we wouldn't even work on a piece of work if they didn't pass a credit check. If they were dodging a credit check, we would put money in an escrow account. And we had our managers, our directors, our recruiters, and the hiring managers saying, well, we won't work with you because these guys will say yes to it. I went, away you go. Absolutely fine. And then we'd send them CVs of people that they couldn't then touch because we've actually registered them. Right. So because we were very aggressive with a small a in terms of what the market was, but we're not going to let people take the mick out of us. If let's just use just a really simple mathematical equation so that people who aren't really familiar with the contract world. So if we're paying someone 600 quid or 700 quid a week, we might be charging them the client £1,000 a week. That's a chunky margin, but it just makes the numbers work. So they work for 4 weeks before they put a timesheet in. So now I'm out, let's say 600, so 6 times 4, so I'm out 2,400. I put my invoice in then, they've got 30 days to pay, so now it's 4,800. And then they still don't pay us. But in the meantime, that guy's now been paid another week. Right, so the money is starting to creep up here. So now we're at 7.6 or whatever it is, 8.6, and suddenly that's one contractor. I'm out nearly 10 grand. And what happens if we place 3 or 4? Because that's what we're aiming at. We're trying to become the first call, front of mind. We want the whole project. We want all 10 people, but you're not paying us. So we have triggers, early warnings. And if that company hasn't got that money, if they've got money, and I know that, and I've signed all my forms, and I've got all my processes on point, I'll just pull the contractors off and start suing them until such time as they pay me.
I suppose that this is really about the credit risk of the client, right? And on one side, you probably can invoice factor that, and the other part,
don't factor anything. Factoring is absolutely mug's game.
Why not?
Because you're paying a percentage of all of your turnover, including VAT and your perm fees. So that's an absolute must case. Sonovate is absolutely ridiculous. Don't work with them. But there are many great businesses that you can work with. So you can work with your bank. It's I know Rich is fine. He's excess free. But there are many businesses that you can work with. You should always ID, but you might have to put some PGs against it. So now your house is on the line. How much risk are you going to take? So if everyone's factoring, muggles get over it and speak to someone like the IDLC to teach you how to do this.
Also, the other part is that if the contractor actually makes a professional mistake, obviously this is where we come in as business liability insurance and making sure that the contractor have their professional indemnity actually covered, right? So what happens if you actually, at this point, the client is not happy? The contractor made some major mistake and then they come over to you.
Okay, well, so this has just happened recently to one of my members, and it did take 24 months to recover, but the client had signed the timesheet to approve the work. So ultimately, as long as my written documentation is on point, if it says you're approving this work, regardless of, you can push back. Now, if you're doing a statement of work and then there are outcomes, most people are doing a hybrid version of this, and you're still going to get your timesheet signed. Timesheet signed means you should be fine and your insurances will support you. If you haven't maintained your documentation, if you have shortcutted anything, if you have not been in regular contact with both parties to say everything's fine, then you might have an argument. Ultimately, you should get away with it. Get away with it. It's a wrong term of phrase. You should be fine in that situation because of their lack of scrutiny and looking at what was actually done. It's very difficult to come back to something 4 or 5 months later and say it didn't work. But that's not our fault. That's because they haven't got internal processes right. So that's their fault. And that's exactly the same for all of the consultancies. It's exactly the same for everyone, even if it's based on triggers and milestones as an SOW. The problem is if people are just being laissez-faire and just really just not looking at the the best practice that everybody works to, that's where the problems lie. So having a process in place. So I love the fact that Joe can do so much of this. You probably still need a grown up somewhere in that process to make sure that you're looking at, so that's what's insured, that's what's happening, and be involved in it. And that's probably the role of a modern day director of sales of a contract business.
Yeah, I think in terms of the contract, if you think about this, is really a high volume, but kind of shorter time spectrum type of business, right? And the onboarding process is actually quite comprehensive for contractors because you really need to make sure that all of the risk is covered when you're doing the contract placement versus the permanent placement. And that including the background checking, the credit check, but then it comes to the insurance check. And I think the awareness, I don't know what's your experience in the market, but sometimes the awareness of the risk of contractor not having insurance is not really,
So, so we were talking just off
Mm.
camera.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a contractor on site without having their own insurance. That's just nuts. It's just
What do you think? Why is that? Like from your perspective?
because ultimately they could be shoddy and don't care. But if they know that they're never going to get insured again because of something that they've done, I think they're much more smart about the work that they're doing.
So
Or
that's an interesting point. You're actually thinking that ultimately knowing that they are required to have insurance and having the risk covered would change their behavior in the first place, meaning that they're more aware, right? So it's actually it's interesting.
Amanda, if somebody
Yeah,
wouldn't take insurance, I'm not sure I'd want to place them in the
that's
first place.
that's an interesting
Right.
point. Yeah.
So I work in professional services,
Mm.
and a lot of people might be sitting here just rolling their eyes right now and say, what scaffolders, builders, cleaners,
It's true. Actually, within the construction industry, you often see the company will actually say we have full public liability insurance and so on, and as a way to show trustworthiness. So,
okay, well, I think it's it's a nuts
mm,
move. I'd expect everyone to have it. If you want the joy and the privilege to actually be a freelancer, so you're expected to land running, do a job and do it brilliantly, and be good enough to actually do that job without imperfection, well, then get yourself insured. And it's 500 quid a year. I mean, I mean, it's not a lot of money, is it, to actually get? I don't know. It's just made up a number.
I mean, it's a day rate typically. If you think about average day rate is about 500, right? 500, 600. So it's one day. It's one day of your work.
Okay, so do you know anybody who goes on holiday without holiday insurance? Right, I go skiing. I have double down on that because I'm a terribly bad skier. Right, so with all of these things, you just want to have peace of mind. And if you're trying to run a company, or even if you're running through, one of the umbrellas, for me, it makes sense to behave and react and give yourself options as a grown up.
I think the other side is really actually for the recruitment company in the process. So when you talk about the process itself, we want to make sure, or as an industry, that we also provide the peace of mind for the client. Because ultimately, you're also providing a really good quality service to the client. You say, hey, the contractor I'm actually supplying is a good quality contractor. He actually adheres to all of the rules, right? And he has the insurance, he or she has the insurance to cover their work if actually there's any professional negligence. And the fact that sometimes the contractors don't have insurance is really concerning, of course, for the
We'd
client.
never
I
placed
mean,
them. Just
yeah.
fact.
So what would you say to the recruitment company who just tell you like, hey, I'm just really busy with like placing the contractor. I just want to get my margin and stuff. And yeah, I do it, but maybe someone in my back office is doing it, but it's not really on the top of my mind. Good, bad, nervous.
I'm trying to absorb that mindset because that's just alien to me. For one thing, I don't think a client should ever touch them, and I don't think any insurance company should ever touch them. So I'm the world's shifting, and I think this is a really interesting time. It's a really interesting time for us to talk.
Yeah.
the recruitment sector had its nose punched in 2024. After 2022, which was the best year that we've ever had in recruitment, 2023 just slowed down. And it was one of those, it's passive death. And then 2024, we realized that nobody in recruitment, apart from contract people, were used to actually speaking to customers and trying to win business. Everybody had got very used to this lethargic approach in 2022, which was get a great candidate, get them 3 interviews, job done, bosh, cash, commission, Marbella. Right, and that's all that they were trying to do. But the smart people were still trying to build client relationships and teach that skill. We come into 2020, December 23 was when we all hit an absolute brick wall. And then people came in and said, I haven't got any salespeople on my sales floor. It's like, I know. So they don't know how to sell. They don't know how to build relationship. I know. Now, for us teaching or explain to a client, we've got really robust and secure compliance. So everyone we place with you is compliant, is not a feature or a benefit that you can sell. It's about us right here, right now. So once we're coming through this 2025 and the market has remarkably bounced, and I didn't predict this, and I think I'm more balls than crystal. I can see the future. And I knew it was coming back this year. I thought 2025 would look like 2023. It's actually starting to look a little bit like 2022, but I'm scared. I'm scared to say it.
Yeah.
However, that's not perm. The world has absolutely shifted in the contracts. So now we've got businesses who've got people who are trying their absolute damnedest, right? So everybody who works for a recruitment CEO is trying their best. They don't want to be dicks. They want to get praise. They want to earn money. They want to be the best that they can. I'm not sure that we're giving them the right tools and equipment to do this. And what we should be saying is just do contract. Because the contract market, and if you look at all of the reports that have come out from the PLCs recently, including my beautiful friends at S3, if it wasn't for contracts, everyone would have their asses on the floor right now.